NPR.
All across the country, there are efforts to tax the wealthy more, from California voting on a billionaire wealth tax to Washington state. In March, it just approved a new tax on individuals or couples earning $1 million or more a year.
Now, a common criticism of these state policies is that wealthy people would just move out of state to avoid those taxes. But avoiding taxes by moving is a lot harder if those taxes are set at the federal level.
In March, Bernie Sanders introduced a bill for a 5% wealth tax on billionaires. And Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen has a bill to make high earners pay more tax. What's interesting about Chris's bill is that it's also a bill for big tax cuts for lower earners.
My goal is to ensure that people who are working paycheck to paycheck, in other words, struggling to make ends meet, that they don't have to pay a federal income tax.
This is The Indicator from Planet Money. I'm Darian Woods.
And I'm Adrian Ma. Today on the show, tax cuts for the middle and working classes and tax hikes for the rich. What's behind this trend? Well, we'll ask Senator Chris Van Hollen to explain his bill and hear from a tax expert who has some reservations.
This message comes from Capella University. You know that feeling when there's a spark building inside you, that you were meant for more? That's your own drive, pushing you towards what's next. Capella University gets that. With their FlexPath learning format, you can set the pace and earn your degree without putting life on pause. You've built experience and know what you're capable of. Now, this is your time to turn that momentum into more. The only real question is, what can't you do? Learn more at capella.edu. This message comes from LinkedIn. As a small business owner, you wear many hats. You're the owner, the marketer, the seller, the hirer. With LinkedIn, you have the tools to help you boost your visibility, find prospective customers, and find the best team for your small business, all in one place. So while LinkedIn can't hang up all of your hats, it makes it easier to wear them all. Learn more at linkedin.com/indicator show. This message comes from Dell. Dell PCs with Intel inside are built for the moments that matter. Like a big project that can't be interrupted by an update. With long-lasting battery life, you can stay focused on what matters. Built for you. Dell.com/Dell PCs.
Senator Chris Van Hollen's big idea is more progressive income tax.
We have a skewed tax system. It is really stacked toward the very wealthy and people who make money off of money, and stacked against people who are making a paycheck, day by day.
What Chris's bill does is make earnings below $46,000 tax-free at the federal level. You'll still have to pay Medicare and Social Security, but no federal income tax. Then you slowly lose this tax-free amount once your income hits around $80,000.
This was the best design to accomplish our goal. This is deficit neutral, meaning the money we raise from the surtax on millionaires is enough to cover the costs of providing tax relief to working Americans.
That's largely true, according to Garrett Watson, Director of Policy Analysis at the Tax Foundation. That's a think tank that analyzes taxes and advocates for a simpler tax system.
Our numbers are fairly similar. So we find a very small net revenue loss, but fairly close.
The Tax Foundation estimates that with this proposal, many low and middle income earners will have more of an incentive to work because they'll be able to keep more of their earnings. But this benefit to the wider economy is offset by the surtax on the very wealthy.
Yeah, that surtax is going to make some of those high earners accountants sweat. For a single filer, it's an extra 5% on income above $1 million, 10% on income above $2 million, and 12% on income above $5 million. Garrett says the rich then face a choice.
Ultimately, you have that trade-off of earning more, working more, and as your tax rate increases all in, you may have an incentive to, hey, I'm just going to engage in leisure and enjoy my existing wealth rather than working more.
So a top AI researcher or a law firm partner, they might decide to work a little less And that's why the Tax Foundation estimates there'd be a small hit to the economy.
Another fear is that the wealthy will just play accounting games to avoid the tax. One way this bill tries to minimize game playing is that the taxes on the wealthy are taken before deductions. So you can't say, donate thousands of dollars to charity to try to avoid the tax. Still, Garrett worries about what's going to happen if even more taxes were to pile on afterwards.
Yes, you can impose a surtax, say, of 12% at the top, added to the existing 37% top income tax rate, added on top of all the other taxes they pay. How much more can you throw onto them before you actually do start seeing major changes in behavior is the big question.
And at what point does the lemon run out of juice? The top 1% of American taxpayers currently contribute roughly 40% of all federal income taxes. And with this proposal, it'd be even higher.
So what really concerns Garrett is what that tax on wealthy earners is used for. In the United States, the federal government is going deeper and deeper into debt, even in the boom times. Garrett sees what he calls an entitlement crisis coming in the future. The main Social Security trust fund is projected to run out of money within about a decade.
We know a crisis is coming and that the entitlements are insolvent, and raising revenue to cut more Americans' taxes yet again is going to make that political and policy challenge even harder.
We raised Garrett's concerns with Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Given these trends and potential future crises that America may face, could you imagine putting all of that money somewhere else?
Well, this is one piece of an overall plan, and there are certainly other ways to raise revenue, which I support. So, for example, the Senator Sanders wealth tax would raise $4 trillion over 10 years. I also support closing lots of corporate tax loopholes that still encourage U.S. businesses to move their operations overseas. So there are lots of other things we can do to raise revenue for other purposes. But my view is that it's important to say to people who are working paycheck to paycheck, who are meeting the definition of a livable wage, that you should be able to live off of that.
But is there a risk of, with all the other proposed taxes, that you do kill the golden goose in the sense that, this is 12% for those very high earners on top of the 37% taxes they pay. Then you add in all these state proposals. Is there a point where you just may not be able to squeeze more? And so in the sense that this money is not limitless for future reforms?
Well, certainly money is not limitless, but, I would remind everybody that when JFK, President Kennedy, was in the White House, the marginal tax rates were 90%. And the big Kennedy tax cut took them down to about 70% marginal tax rates. As you're pointing out, under this plan, if you're in the top tier over $7 million for a couple, you'll be around a 50% marginal tax rate.
What Chris seems to be tapping into is a sense by Americans that they're paying too much in taxes. Lydia Saad is the director of U.S. social research at Gallup, the big polling agency. And she says the early 2000s were a high point for American satisfaction with taxes. And that's largely due to George W. Bush's tax cuts.
People were feeling much better about their taxes than they had been leading up to that point. And that persisted for really the next decade.
That's not true now.
Since 2022, we've seen a real decrease in positivity among taxpayers about paying taxes and the amount they pay.
Lydia thinks this is largely due to the lingering effects of inflation. Now, about half of Americans don't think the tax they're paying is fair, and that's true up and down the income ladder.
Chris Van Hollen believes he's found a way to ease some of those frustrations by getting the people at the very top of the economic pyramid to pay for people lower down. It's a plain fact that there are more voters there than at the peak. This episode was produced by Angel Carreras with engineering by Robert Rodriguez. It was fact-checked by Sierra Juarez. Kate Kincannon is our editor, and The Indicator is a production of NPR.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Charles Schwab with its original podcast on investing. It's hosted by Liz Ann Saunders, Schwab's chief investment strategist, and Colin Martin, head of fixed income research and strategy for the Schwab Center for Financial Research. Each week, Liz Ann, Colin, and their guests analyze economic developments and bring context to conversations around stocks, fixed income, the economy, and more. Download the latest episode and subscribe at schwab.com/oninvesting or wherever you get your podcasts. Support for NPR and the following message come from HomeServe. It never happens at a good time. The pipe bursts at midnight. The heater quits on the coldest night. Good thing HomeServe's hotline is available 24/7. Call to schedule a repair and a local pro will be on their way. Trusted by millions. For plans starting at $4.99 a month, go to homeserve.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs.